There are seasons when the enemy does not show himself through loud storms or dramatic attacks. Instead, he chooses silence as his weapon. He freezes the very atmosphere around your destiny until your spirit feels numb, your mind feels slow, and your feet feel heavy. It is the kind of attack that does not push you backwards, because backward movement is too obvious. Instead, it quietly arrests your ability to move forward. You wake up and realize you are standing in the same spot emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, as though an icy hand has wrapped itself around your future. Everything inside you wants to advance, but something unseen holds your life at a slow, unnatural, cold pause. This kind of freezing attack is subtle yet suffocating. It is not the collapse of your dreams, it is the suspension of them. You do not lose the vision entirely. You simply lose the fire that carries it. It begins with small delays that seem harmless, then drifts into a pattern of halted progress that no amount of effort can melt. You try to pray, but the fire feels distant. You try to plan, but the clarity feels locked. You try to move, but the spiritual environment around you feels frozen, still unmoving. This is not stagnation by coincidence. This is paralysis by design. Every destiny has a temperature. When the temperature drops spiritually, your passion cools, your urgency weakens, and your drive becomes sluggish. The enemy understands this principle, so he releases a cold wind into areas where your momentum is most dangerous to him. He knows that as long as your spirit stays warm, your progress becomes unstoppable. So he freezes your inspiration, chills your motivation, and suppresses the heat that fuels your consistency. The cold settles slowly, unnoticed, until your life becomes a landscape of delayed manifestations and frozen opportunities. This freezing is strategic. It does not kill your destiny, it suspends it. It does not shut doors, it simply locks the hinges. It does not destroy your gifts. It places them in a cold storage where they cannot produce. And the most painful part is that it feels strangely peaceful on the surface, not chaotic, not dramatic, just quiet and still. The enemy knows that stillness without God is deadly, because stillness without fire becomes spiritual paralysis. It is a calm designed to suffocate your progress. In this spiritual freeze, time begins to behave strangely. Days pass, but nothing moves. Weeks pass, but nothing changes. Months pass, but nothing grows. You sense that something is wrong, because everything in your life starts to feel suspended between where you were and where you should be. You are not going backward, but you are not going forward either. You are not defeated, but you are not advancing. You are not empty, but you are not overflowing. You are simply stuck, frozen in a moment that refuses to melt. And this is where the enemy becomes bold. He takes advantage of the cold to whisper lies that weaken your faith. He convinces you that you are not progressing because you are not capable. He convinces you that the delay is because you are unworthy. He convinces you that the lack of movement means God has forgotten you. When life grows cold, the voice of deception grows loud. But these are not revelations. They are frostbites to the mind, designed to numb your hope until your spirit loses warmth. But the enemy underestimates one thing: the God you serve does not require heat to produce fire. He generates heat. He creates momentum. He ignites what has gone cold. Before the fire of God rises, he often allows the freeze to expose what has been hidden. He lets the cold reveal the ropes around your progress, the invisible chains holding your destiny hostage, and the silent limitations covering your gifts. The freeze becomes an X-ray that uncovers what you could not see in seasons of heat and movement. When a child of God is frozen, heaven does not panic. Heaven prepares fire. Because every freeze is an invitation for divine intervention. Every cold season is a setup for supernatural thawing. Every immobilizing attack is an announcement that God is about to introduce heat into the atmosphere of your life. There is no freeze so deep that the fire of God cannot melt. There is no paralysis so strong that divine heat cannot break. There is no delay so long that the breath of God cannot revive. And this is the mystery the enemy fears: that frozen seasons do not kill destiny. They awaken it. They provoke heaven. They trigger fire. They call for divine response. The moment the freeze is identified, the fire begins to rise. The moment the paralysis is exposed, heaven prepares movement. The moment the cold is recognized, God releases heat that travels through every layer of your life. What the enemy meant to immobilize you becomes the reason God accelerates you. Tonight marks the beginning of that shift. The freeze is about to melt. The numbness is about to break. The stillness is about to ignite. The same areas that felt cold and unresponsive are about to feel the warmth of divine fire. The same seasons that felt suspended are about to accelerate. The same dreams that felt immobilized are about to move with new strength. What was frozen will burn again, and what was paralyzed will rise again. The God who answers by fire is stepping into your atmosphere, and every area of spiritual paralysis is about to release its grip. There are signs that reveal when life has been frozen spiritually, but they are rarely loud. They slip into your routine quietly, shaping your days without announcing their arrival. One of the first signs is when your heart becomes heavy without reason. Not broken, not defeated, just heavy. You sense that something inside you has lost its elasticity, as though your spirit is trying to stretch forward but keeps meeting resistance. This heaviness is not emotional tiredness. It is spiritual friction. When movement becomes difficult in the unseen, heaviness becomes the symptom in the seen. Another sign is the slow fading of your excitement. Goals you once pursued with fire begin to feel distant. Dreams that once stirred passion now feel neutral. Even victories that used to energize you begin to feel muted. It is as if someone placed your destiny inside a cold room where sound is muffled, energy is reduced, and enthusiasm becomes weak. This is not laziness. It is a targeted spiritual freeze designed to disconnect your heart from your destiny before it disconnects your steps. You will also notice a pattern of delayed responses. Doors that should have opened quickly begin to slow down. People who used to respond immediately begin delaying without reason. Progress that once flowed becomes clogged with sudden pauses. Opportunities that were once active suddenly seem to be waiting for something you cannot identify. When destiny begins to freeze, life's rhythm changes. Time slows down around you in unnatural ways, revealing that something invisible is influencing your movement. Another sign is the struggle to complete what you start, not because you lack discipline, but because something interrupts the flow each time you begin. Projects begin strong but lose momentum halfway. Inspiration comes, but the energy to act on it disappears. Plans are clear in your mind, but they dissolve the moment you try to execute them. This is the paralysis of movement, not stopping you from starting, but preventing you from continuing. Something freezes your consistency, knowing that unfinished progress is as dangerous as no progress at all. There is also a sense of spiritual numbness that settles in. Prayer becomes effortful, not because you are far from God, but because your spiritual senses have been coated with coldness. Worship feels distant. Intercession feels foggy. Revelation feels slow. You know God is close, yet the warmth you once felt in his presence seems buried under an invisible frost. This numbness is not spiritual decline. It is a sign that something is interfering with your sensitivity, freezing your spiritual perception so you cannot discern movement or direction. Another sign is repetitive cycles of near breakthrough. You keep coming close to success, almost promoted, almost favored, almost accepted, almost approved. But something freezes the moment before manifestation. The cycle repeats so consistently that you begin to sense an invisible barrier holding blessings hostage at the brink of fulfillment. This is not coincidence. It is the sign of a freezing power stationed at the threshold of your breakthroughs, targeting your ability to cross over into manifestation. You may also observe unnatural mental fog. Your thoughts become slow. Your decision-making becomes unclear. Your focus becomes scattered, even when you try to concentrate. Ideas that were once sharp now feel dull. Directions that were once clear now feel confusing. It feels like someone poured cold water over your mind, slowing down the speed of your thoughts. This is not fatigue. It is a sign that the freeze has entered the realm of your clarity, targeting the mental sharpness needed for progress. Relationships connected to your destiny also begin to behave unusually. People who are meant to help you suddenly become distant. Conversations lose warmth. Support grows cold. Connections that once flowed smoothly become strained, silent, or stuck. This is a sign that the freezing power is not only affecting your internal world, but also touching the external environment around you. manipulating relationships so your destiny cannot move through the channels God prepared. Another sign is the feeling of being present, but not progressing. You wake up, live your day, complete tasks, and go to bed, yet nothing seems to shift. You are active, but not advancing. You are working, but not breaking through. You are praying, but not crossing thresholds. This is the frustration of spiritual paralysis. Movement without advancement. It mimics life while hiding the absence of progress. And finally, one of the strongest signs is the silent knowing inside you that something is restraining your destiny. You cannot explain it logically, but your spirit knows. You sense invisible hands around your movement. You feel the delay in your atmosphere. You see the frost on your opportunities. This inner knowing is the voice of the Holy Spirit, revealing that progress is not missing, it is being held. And anything held can be released. Anything frozen can be melted. Anything paralyzed can move again. These signs are not to condemn you. They are signals that the fire of deliverance is about to locate you. There are battles that do not begin on the ground. They begin in the unseen corridors where destinies are monitored and movements are tracked. The freezing of progress is rarely random. It is released by hands that understand the danger of your next level. These hands operate quietly, looking for the exact moment when your momentum begins to rise, and that is when they strike. They do not push. They do not fight openly. They simply release a spiritual cold that wraps itself around your destiny like a slow, invisible frost. When your progress suddenly slows without cause, it is a sign that unseen forces have located your path. One of the first origins of spiritual freezing comes from monitoring spirits assigned to study your patterns. They watch your breakthroughs, your cycles, your moments of rising, and your seasons of favor. They do not attack your weakness, they attack your progress. And when they detect acceleration, they release a cold wind designed to immobilize you at the edge of your advancement. The freeze is not about your past. It is about preventing your future from arriving. It is an intentional, calculated paralysis, targeted at your divine speed. Another source of freezing comes from ancestral altars that oppose movement. These altars do not always manifest as chaotic attacks. Sometimes they manifest as stillness. They carry covenants that restrict progression beyond a certain point. When someone in that lineage attempts to rise beyond the permitted level, the altar releases a freezing force that slows everything down. It's not that you are unqualified, it is that the altar is unauthorized to let you advance. This subtle resistance appears as delays, stagnation, and unexplained pauses because the altar is reacting to your destiny's ascent. Spiritual freezing also comes from witchcraft attacks designed to suspend destinies mid-air. Unlike other forms of witchcraft that bring confusion or destruction, this type aims for immobilization. It does not need to break you, it only needs to stop you. These powers release spiritual frost meant to numb your inner strength, weaken your resolve, and choke your momentum. They create an atmosphere where your destiny feels like it is under a glass lid, visible but unreachable. You see what you should become, yet everything around you moves in slow motion. There are also dark consultations done against your name, where individuals speak words of paralysis into the spiritual realm. Words can freeze just as powerfully as curses. When someone declares that you will never move forward, never succeed, or never rise beyond them, those words become spiritual ice. They gather around your destiny until your progress feels restrained by sentences spoken in secret. These spoken freezes act like spiritual handcuffs, limiting movement without leaving visible chains. Another origin lies in destiny exchanges forces that benefit from your immobility. They freeze your progress so they can advance using your spiritual identity. While your destiny is held in cold suspension, theirs moves with stolen warmth. This is why some people suffer long seasons of delay while others rise using the opportunities, favor, and grace originally assigned to them. It is not always coincidence. Sometimes it is spiritual theft, protected by a freezing mechanism. There are freezing attacks that come from spiritual jealousy. Some individuals in your environment may resent the speed at which God intended for you to rise. Their envy is not loud, but it is active. They release subtle spiritual projections, cold winds of resistance, and emotional frost aimed at draining your enthusiasm. Their words, thoughts, and intentions carry spiritual temperature, and when they turn cold toward you, that cold affects your atmosphere. The freeze may not originate from your enemies alone. Sometimes it originates from those uncomfortable with your rising glow. Another source of freezing is environmental strongholds. Some regions carry spiritual climates that resist movement. You can live in a place where progress flows for others, but remains frozen for you, because the territorial powers have identified your assignment. When a territory senses that you are called to break cycles that have existed for generations, it releases atmospheric frosts to suppress your influence. The environment becomes spiritually hostile, not through warfare, but through coldness that steals your momentum 1 degree at a time. There are also personal covenants you did not make, but were born into cycles of delay, patterns of stagnation, family histories of slow progress. These covenants act like ancient refrigerators of destiny, storing generations in the same conditions, ensuring no one moves faster than the previous one. When you begin to break those patterns, the covenant releases resistance in the form of a freeze, hoping to return you to the family's historical pace. What looks like a personal delay is often a generational freeze. And finally, one of the most dangerous origins of freezing is spiritual verdicts written against your movement. These may come from accusations in the spirit realm, unbroken agreements, unresolved spiritual claims, or unchallenged altars that insist you must stay where you are. These verdicts demand stillness instead of movement, delay instead of acceleration, numbness instead of fire. But every verdict can be appealed, every freeze can be reversed, every origin can be uprooted. Because the moment the source is exposed, the fire of God gains legal ground to melt the paralysis and restore your progress. Movement is one of the most dangerous weapons a child of God possesses, because every step you take in destiny threatens the structures of darkness assigned to your life. The enemy is not intimidated by your dreams. He is intimidated by your ability to move toward them. A dream without motion is harmless, but a dream backed by steps becomes a threat. This is why he does not always try to destroy your purpose. Instead, he freezes your capacity to pursue it. He knows that as long as you remain still, he does not need to fight your destiny. He only needs to manage your paralysis. Every advancement you make shifts spiritual territories. When you move in obedience, you reclaim grounds the enemy has occupied for years. When you move in purpose, you break patterns that have bound your bloodline. When you move in faith, you activate heaven's intervention. That movement creates shockwaves in the unseen, announcing that the child of God is rising. The enemy understands the cost of allowing you to move freely, so he goes after your motion before he goes after your mission. He freezes your feet so he can freeze your future. Movement is also the language of manifestation. God responds to motion. Heaven aligns with steps. Angels follow momentum. Miracles pursue direction. When you begin to move towards what God promised, you activate a divine ecosystem that multiplies your progress. The enemy cannot stop heaven from backing you, so he tries to stop you from stepping. He knows that the moment you take movement seriously, every delay begins to break, every chain begins to loosen, and every prophecy begins to accelerate. He attacks movement to mute manifestation. The enemy also targets movement because motion exposes his schemes. When you begin advancing, you begin discerning. As you take steps, you see what was hidden. As you move forward, you recognize patterns you couldn't see while standing still. Movement sharpens awareness. Stillness hides truth. When you remain frozen, the enemy can manipulate your environment without detection. But once you begin moving, you start uncovering the traps, limitations, and invisible barriers set against your progress. Your movement becomes your revelation. Another reason the enemy attacks your movement is because progress rewrites family history. You are the one chosen to break the cycle of stagnation, to outrun generational limitations, to rise where others stopped. When you move, you disrupt the script that has governed your lineage for years. A freeze is sent to keep you in agreement with old patterns, because your movement begins a new pattern heaven has ordained. Your progress becomes a prophetic announcement that the generational freeze is ending through you. Darkness fears the ripple effect of your rising. Movement is also tied to momentum. Once momentum arrives, it becomes difficult to stop. A spiritually moving person becomes unstoppable because each step strengthens the next. This is why the enemy attacks early before momentum can form. He freezes the first step, knowing that if you take one, you will take 5 more. And if you take 5, You will break into acceleration. The enemy fears your speed because divine momentum turns ordinary effort into supernatural results. A frozen person can be controlled. A moving person cannot. When you move, you step into divine timing. Every season God prepared for you is calendar activated through steps, not wishes. Many blessings you are praying for are waiting for your movement, not your words. Doors that seem closed are not locked. They are waiting for footsteps. The enemy freezes your progress to disconnect you from heaven's timing, weakening the alignment between your season and your steps. If he can freeze your movement, he can delay your manifestation. Delayed steps lead to delayed harvests. Movement also shifts spiritual authority. When you begin to walk in purpose, you start occupying the territory God assigned to you. Every step stakes a claim. Every decision takes ground. Every act of obedience expands your dominion. The enemy wants to keep you in a small circle of limited impact. Because movement expands your influence, he uses freezing attacks to keep your world small, your reach limited, and your authority inactive. The smaller your movement, the weaker your dominion. The moment you move, your dominion awakens. The enemy attacks movement because motion creates disruption in the kingdom of darkness. Every advancement tears down a stronghold, dismantles a lie, breaks a cycle, or weakens a demonic claim. Your movement is not just physical, it is spiritual warfare. When you move, you disturb the enemy's arrangements. When you move, you interrupt the plans designed to slow you. When you move, you destabilize systems built to trap you. Progress is warfare. So the enemy releases cold wind to neutralize your ability to disrupt him. And ultimately, the enemy targets your movement because movement is life. God created you for motion spiritually, mentally, emotionally, destiny-wise. Stagnation is not your natural state. It is a spiritual imposition. When you stop moving, you stop becoming. When you stop becoming, you stop transforming. When you stop transforming, you stop manifesting. Freezing your movement is the enemy's strategy to freeze your evolution. But once the fire of God touches your life, every chain that held your motion breaks, every frost melts, and every restriction loses power. Because the destiny God wrote for you requires motion, and heaven will not allow paralysis to rewrite your story. There are realms in the spirit where destinies are held still, not by force, but by atmospheric imprisonment. These are the cold chambers of delay, spiritual environments designed to suspend progress without breaking it. When a destiny enters such a chamber, movement stops, passion cools, and opportunities freeze in midair. These chambers are not places of death, they are prisons of stillness, built to keep a person's life in a state of unchanging repetition. Many people live inside these chambers without knowing, repeating the same struggles year after year, trapped in a loop that feels familiar but never fruitful. Inside these chambers, time behaves differently. What should take days takes months. What should take months takes years. Life moves around you, but not for you. You see others rise while your own progress remains frozen at the same temperature. It is not because you're stagnant. It is because your destiny has been placed on pause. These chambers slow every step, weaken every plan, and trap every season in a continuous cycle of almost, but not yet. You sense movement spiritually, but nothing materializes physically. It is as if your life is frozen between prophecy and fulfillment, waiting for a divine thaw. These chambers often contain unfinished destinies, dreams that were birthed but never matured, visions that were seeded but never harvested. They hold purposes that once burned brightly but were suddenly cooled by unseen interference. You can feel that you were made for more, yet something keeps that more suspended behind an invisible wall. The cold ensures that your destiny does not decay, but also prevents it from manifesting. It is spiritual refrigeration preservation without progression. The enemy is not trying to destroy your purpose. He is trying to freeze it indefinitely. One of the most dangerous cold chambers is the chamber of delayed seasons. In this place, divine timing becomes foggy. Doors remain open but inaccessible. Opportunities hover but do not land. Blessings remain in orbit, unable to enter your atmosphere. You feel close to breakthrough, yet never stepping into it. This is the chamber where life remains on the way, but never arrives. It is a spiritual tactic meant to frustrate your faith, weaken your confidence, and blur your expectation. If the enemy can freeze your seasons, he can suffocate your momentum. Another chamber is the chamber of suspended identity. In this realm, the enemy freezes who you are becoming. He dulls your confidence, cools your fire, and suppresses your spiritual strength. You know you carry greatness, but the cold makes it feel distant. You sense power inside you, but the temperature of your environment forces it into dormancy. You are not lost. You are locked. Your identity is not missing. It is frozen. Purpose remains intact, but paralyzed. This chamber keeps you from stepping into the fullness of who God says you are. Then there is the chamber of frozen opportunities, a place where divine connections, open doors, and strategic helpers are held still. The enemy does not always block opportunities. Sometimes he freezes them so they never reach you. People who were meant to favor you suddenly forget you. Platforms that should have opened remain silent. Resources that should be flowing are paused. The chamber ensures opportunities exist, but you cannot touch them. It creates a gap between you and the help assigned to your destiny, leaving your path cold and your progress delayed. Another chamber is the chamber of silent battles, where nothing seems wrong externally, but everything feels cold internally. Your environment looks peaceful, yet your spirit senses imprisonment. You cannot explain the heaviness, but you feel it. You cannot describe the delay, but you know it. This chamber hides the enemy's activity behind quietness, making you believe the freeze is normal when it is actually an active spiritual assault. It is a place where the enemy wants you to adjust to numbness, to accept stillness as your portion, and to normalize spiritual frost. There is also the chamber of unfinished transitions, where God prepares you for a new season. But the enemy freezes the bridge that carries you into it. You feel ready. You feel aligned. You feel prepared. Yet movement does not come. The transition sits between realms, unable to complete. This chamber is dangerous because it convinces you that nothing is happening when everything has been prepared. The enemy uses cold to interrupt divine transitions, hoping to return you to old cycles before you enter new dimensions. The chamber of frozen prayers is another subtle trap. Prayers that should produce fire feel cold upon release. Declarations lose weight. Worship feels distant. Intercession feels like it is echoing in ice. It is not that heaven is silent. It is that your prayer life is being surrounded by spiritual frost, designed to numb its effectiveness. This chamber disconnects your voice from its impact, making you feel spiritually disconnected, even when God is near. And finally, there is the chamber of paused destiny, the final layer of the freezing attack. This is the place where everything about your life feels like it is waiting for something you cannot identify. You feel movement inside you, but stillness around you. You feel promise in your spirit, but paralysis in your steps. You sense arrival, but feel distance. This chamber is the enemy's attempt to trap you in a permanent waiting room, a place where progress is always scheduled but never delivered. At the moment the fire of God enters this chamber, every frozen layer melts, every suspended season releases, every locked destiny opens, and what has been paused begins to move again with unstoppable force. There comes a moment when the cold grip surrounding a destiny meets something it cannot withstand, the fire of the living God. This fire is not symbolic. It is spiritual force, divine heat, heavenly energy that melts what darkness has frozen. When the fire of God enters a life, it does not negotiate with paralysis. It consumes it. It does not warm the atmosphere. It ignites it. It does not merely melt the surface. It penetrates into the deepest layers where the freeze began. The cold that took years to form begins to break in seconds under the intensity of divine fire. What the enemy built slowly, God destroys suddenly. The fire of God attacks paralysis at its root. It travels into the unseen chambers where your destiny was suspended and begins to dismantle the spiritual structures that held you still. Every altar of delay begins to crack. Every spell of stagnation begins to evaporate. Every word that froze your progress begins to burn away. Fire does not argue with frost. It overwhelms it. Fire does not explain itself. It demonstrates itself. When the fire of God shows up, the cold has no choice but to retreat, because the fire carries a temperature the enemy cannot withstand. This fire is not ordinary. It is the same fire that fell on Elijah's altar and consumed water, stones, and dust. It is the same fire that led Israel by night. It is the same fire that sat on the heads of the disciples in the upper room and turned fearful men into unstoppable witnesses. When this fire comes upon you, it not only warms your destiny, it transforms your nature. Fear melts, lethargy melts, uncertainty melts, hesitation melts. Everything that reduces your ability to move begins to dissolve under the intensity of heaven's flame. The fire of God restores motion where motion was lost. It revives your inner strength, enlarges your capacity, sharpens your discernment, and reignites your passion. Suddenly, areas that felt numb begin to feel alive. The dreams that felt distant return with force. The clarity that felt locked begins to shine again. You feel the weight on your shoulders lifting as the fire burns through layers of spiritual ice that have coated your destiny. What felt impossible becomes possible because fire defeats paralysis without resistance. This fire also breaks the spiritual atmosphere around you. When the fire of God enters your environment, it raises the temperature spiritually. Demonic frost cannot survive where divine heat is rising. The fire creates a climate where blessings can move, where opportunities can flow, and where destiny helpers can find you. The cold winds that once slowed your progress lose their influence because fire changes the weather of your destiny. When your atmosphere shifts, your life follows. Fire transforms conditions so movement can return. There is also a fire that targets the mind. When the enemy froze your progress, he also froze your thinking, slowing your creativity, dulling your ideas, weakening your decision-making. But the fire of God melts mental fog. It restores sharpness, focus, and clarity. Suddenly you think faster, see deeper, and understand broader. The fire illuminates what was hidden, exposes what was confusing, and unlocks what was stuck. Your mind becomes a furnace of revelation, heated by divine inspiration, and every cold thought loses its authority. The fire of God also touches the heart. Freezing attacks often numb emotions. Passion cools, excitement fades, desire diminishes. But when the fire enters your heart, it resurrects your spiritual temperature. You begin to feel again. You begin to hope again. You begin to believe again. The fire revives the love you had for God, the hunger you carried for His presence, and the boldness you walked in before the freeze. Your heart becomes warm with faith, burning with expectation, alive with purpose. This fire also breaks generational freezes. When it arrives, it does not stop. It melts the cycles of delay your parents battled, the stagnation your family accepted, the immobility that ran through generations. Fire rewrites lineage. Fire breaks patterns. Fire redefines inheritance. What froze those before you cannot freeze you, because the fire resting on your life becomes a generational deliverance, melting chains your ancestors could not break. The fire of God restores movement with acceleration. When something frozen melts, it does not return to slow motion, it flows faster. The same is true spiritually. When God melts the freeze over your destiny, you do not return to normal speed. You step into divine speed. What should have taken 10 years begins to happen in 1. Delayed promises begin to gather themselves. Held blessings begin to chase you. The fire not only melts the freeze, it compensates for lost time. Heaven accelerates what hell tried to immobilize. And finally, the fire of God seals your freedom. Once the paralysis melts, the fire fortifies your atmosphere so the cold cannot return. It becomes a protective heat around your destiny, a spiritual temperature that freezes the enemy instead of allowing the enemy to freeze you. This fire becomes your shield, your covering, your climate. Wherever you go, you carry a heat that darkness cannot tolerate. Your destiny becomes too hot for stagnation, your purpose too heated for delay, and your future too fiery for paralysis. When the fire of God rests on your life, cold seasons end permanently. I declare that every spiritual frost sitting on your destiny begins to melt right now. Every invisible cold hand gripping your progress loses its power. Every area where your life has been slowed, paused, or suspended is receiving divine heat. You shall not remain in this frozen season. You shall not remain in this spiritual numbness. The same fire that consumed the altars of Baal is rising to consume the altars that have frozen your steps. Every freezing wind sent against your movement is reversing by fire. You are stepping out of the cold and into the warmth of divine acceleration. I declare that every ancestral covenant that kept your family in slow progress breaks from your life. Every generational freeze that swallowed the destinies of those before you shall not swallow yours. You are the breaker of the cycle. You are the interruption in the pattern. You are the fire-carrying vessel chosen to melt the limitations that ran through your bloodline. Every agreement that authorized delay is revoked. Every verdict that enforced stagnation is overturned. Every generational freezer is losing its authority over your steps. You are stepping into a new spiritual temperature. I declare that every witchcraft projection designed to numb your passion and immobilize your destiny is consumed by the fire of God. Every spell that suspended your opportunities, every incantation that froze your favor, every ritual that locked your movement, let the fire of heaven burn them to ashes. Your spirit is regaining sensitivity. Your destiny is regaining motion. Your progress is regaining life. What witchcraft attempted to freeze, divine fire is resurrecting. Your future refuses to remain under the influence of dark frost. I declare that every monitoring spirit sent to observe your rising and release cold winds at the edge of your breakthrough is blinded by fire. Their surveillance ends. Their influence ends. Their assignments end. You are becoming invisible to the enemy and visible to destiny. Every eye that watched your progress to freeze it is struck with blindness. You shall rise without interruption. You shall advance without obstruction. You shall move without delay. The atmosphere around your destiny becomes too hot for monitoring forces to operate. I declare that every spiritual chamber where your blessings were frozen is breaking open. Every room where your progress was suspended is unlocking. Every cage where your purpose was held is melting under the fire of God. Your season is shifting. The spiritual environment around your destiny is heating up. The ice holding your opportunities is breaking. The frost around your purpose is dissolving. What was locked is being released. What was delayed is being delivered. What was paused is being resumed with supernatural speed. I declare that your mind is thawing from every freezing attack sent to dull your clarity. Mental fog is clearing. Confusion is lifting. Slow thinking is breaking. Your ideas are heating up with fresh revelation. Your decisions are becoming sharp again. Your focus is returning with intensity. Your creativity is flowing again. Every cold arrow shot into your thoughts is melting. Your mind becomes a furnace of divine ideas, heated by the breath of God, untouched by the frost of darkness. You shall think clearly, decide boldly, and discern accurately. I declare that your spirit is awakening from every layer of numbness, the cold that settled on your prayer life. Your worship, your devotion, your hunger melts by fire. You shall pray again with intensity. You shall worship again with fire. You shall hear God again with clarity. You shall hunger again with depths. Every spiritual frost that made the presence of God feel distant is dissolving. Your inner altar is heating up. The flame inside you is rising. Your spirit is returning to its supernatural temperature. I declare that every delay stationed at the gates of your breakthrough is dismantling. The forces that froze your progress at the edge of manifestation lose their assignment. You shall not come close and fail. You shall not rise and stop. You shall not almost break through and then freeze in place. Every almost spirit is cast out. Every threshold barrier is burned. Every gatekeeper of stagnation is displaced. You are stepping into completion, manifestation, fulfillment. Your progress shall no longer stop at the edge. It shall overflow into reality. I declare that every relationship frozen by spiritual interference is thawing. Destiny helpers are remembering you. Support is warming up. Favors that went silent are returning. Hearts that grew cold toward you are being reignited by divine influence. The channels meant to carry your advancement are reopening. Every relational bridge that the enemy froze is melting. People assigned to elevate you are waking up. Partnerships ordained by God are moving toward you. Your connections are coming alive again under divine fire. I declare that your destiny is entering irreversible motion. The freeze is broken. The paralysis is shattered. The numbness is removed. You are stepping into a realm where movement cannot be stopped, where progress cannot be frozen, where advancement cannot be reversed. The fire resting on your life becomes your climate, your covering, your atmosphere. You shall move with divine speed, rise with divine heat, and advance with divine force. Your destiny is too hot for delay, too fiery for stagnation, and too heated for paralysis. From this moment forward, you shall move. There are areas of your life that have been frozen so long they began to feel normal, but tonight, the heat of deliverance is entering every corner. The fire of God is not touching you lightly. It is invading every cold place with force. It is moving into the timelines where your progress stopped, into the memories where your confidence froze, into the seasons where your destiny paused. Nothing in your life is being left untouched. The same fire that fell in the days of Elijah is sweeping through your foundation, igniting everything that has been dormant, hidden, or restrained. Every area that has been silent is coming alive again. The heat of deliverance is entering your finances. Every cold wind that froze your income, delayed your provision, blocked your advancement, and shut down your opportunities is being melted. You shall not live in financial winters anymore. The fire of God is heating your hands to produce, heating your ideas to multiply, heating your pathways to overflow. What was stuck begins to move. What was delayed begins to open. What was scarce begins to rise. Every spirit of financial paralysis loses its grip because divine heat is thawing the places where your abundance was trapped. The fire of deliverance is entering your relationships. Every area where connection grew cold, where love faded, where communication froze, where destiny partnerships paused, is receiving warmth again. God is releasing fire into your relational atmosphere, melting misunderstandings, dissolving isolation, and reigniting connections that were frozen by spiritual interference. People who were meant to elevate you, support you, stand with you, and empower you are warming toward you again. The freeze that separated you from what God ordained is breaking under holy heat. The heat of God is entering your purpose. Every dream that has been frozen in your heart, every assignment you placed on the shelf, every calling you delayed, every passion you buried is being revived. Fire is entering the core of your destiny and awakening what the cold tried to silence. Suddenly you will feel alive again, driven again, focused again. The assignments you thought were over are returning with new clarity. The purpose that felt distant is drawing near. The fire is pulling your destiny out of the cold room and placing it back into divine movement. The fire of deliverance is entering your emotions. Every frozen place in your heart, every disappointment that numbed you, every betrayal that hardened you, every failure that discouraged you is melting. God is warming the areas where you stopped feeling, caring, hoping, or believing. The numbness is lifting. The heaviness is melting. Emotional paralysis is breaking. Your heart is coming back to life with strength, with courage, with faith, with joy. You will not walk through life emotionally cold. God is replacing the ice with fire. The heat of God is entering your prayer life. Every cold layer that made prayer difficult, heavy, or dry is dissolving. The enemy froze your passion for prayer because he feared the fire you carry when you intercede. But that freeze ends tonight. Fire is falling on your altar again. Your tongue is heating up. Your spirit is roaring back to life. You will pray with intensity, authority, and clarity. Revelation will flow again. Worship will burn again. Intercession will break forth again. Your altar is returning to flame. The fire of deliverance is entering your assignments and work. Every project that sat untouched, every idea that refused to move, every task that remained incomplete because spiritual cold slowed your consistency. The heat of God is melting the resistance. Productivity is returning. Focus is rising. Discipline is awakening. The spirit of paralysis that made you delay, procrastinate, or lose energy is melting. You will handle what once overwhelmed you. You will finish what once defeated you. The fire is restoring your ability to execute. The heat of God is entering your health. Every part of your body that has been under spiritual cold, fatigue, weakness, unexplained heaviness is receiving divine warmth. The fire of God is moving into your bones, your muscles, your organs, your systems, igniting healing. Energy is rising. Strength is returning. Vitality is awakening. Every sickness caused by spiritual frost is breaking under fire. You shall not live a frozen life. You shall carry divine temperature, divine strength, divine health. The fire of deliverance is entering your environment. The atmosphere around you is heating up. The cold clouds that hovered over your home, your peace, your growth, your destiny lifting. Fire is clearing the air around your life, melting spiritual fog, dissolving pressure, scattering demonic frost. Your environment is becoming a climate where blessings flow, where ideas live, where opportunities move, where angels operate freely. The freeze over your environment breaks completely under divine heat. And finally, the fire of God is entering your future. Every year that was frozen, every destiny path that was paused, every calling that was delayed is being unlocked. The fire is moving ahead of you, melting obstacles, breaking ice barriers, clearing pathways, rewriting timelines. Your future is heating up. Opportunities that seemed distant are drawing close. Breakthroughs that once crawled toward you are running in your direction. You are stepping into a future too hot for stagnation, too fiery for delay, too heated for paralysis. Everything frozen is melting. Everything paused is moving. Everything locked is opening. The heat of deliverance is restoring your destiny. Momentum is one of the greatest signs that a freeze is broken. When God releases acceleration, movement returns with a force that defies logic, timelines, and human prediction. This momentum is not natural speed. It is spiritual propulsion. It is the hand of God pushing you forward with strength that surprises even you. When heaven restores momentum, your steps become ordered, your decisions become sharper, and your progress becomes quicker. You begin to feel a pull, a divine gravity drawing you into places you once struggled to reach. What once required great effort now begins to flow with supernatural ease. The restoration of momentum begins internally. Before acceleration appears in your life, it first awakens in your spirit. You begin to feel a stirring, divine urgency to move, to act, to build, to pursue, to rise. This stirring is not anxiety, it is alignment. It is the Holy Spirit reactivating the engines of your destiny. Suddenly you no longer feel stuck. You no longer feel numb. You no longer feel suspended between seasons. Something inside you begins to push forward, and that internal movement becomes the prophetic announcement that external acceleration is coming. As momentum returns, clarity sharpens. God begins to illuminate the path ahead, causing the next steps to become visible in ways they weren't before. Confusion dissolves. Hesitation melts. Indecision breaks. What was once blurry becomes focused, and what was once overwhelming becomes achievable. Acceleration is impossible without clarity, so heaven restores both at the same time. You begin to know where to go, how to go, and when to go. The fog that slowed your decision-making lifts, and divine direction becomes your compass. Momentum also brings alignment. People who were disconnected suddenly reappear with purpose. Relationships that were cold warm up. Helpers who were silent remember you. Favor that froze begins to flow again. Acceleration requires the right environment. So God rearranges your atmosphere, exposing who belongs in your next chapter and removing who cannot handle your rise. As momentum increases, everything in your life shifts to match your new speed. What is not aligned with your destiny cannot survive the acceleration God sends. When God gives momentum, resistance loses its effect. The same obstacles that once stopped you can no longer stand in your way. The same delays that once discouraged you cannot touch you. The same walls that once intimidated you cannot hold you back. Divine acceleration places an anointing on your life that makes you spiritually slippery. Nothing can hold you, trap you, or freeze you. You move past things that held you captive for years, because the fire has melted the grip of every controlling force. You become unstoppable. Momentum also releases rapid restoration. Time that was lost is recovered. Seasons you missed are redeemed. Opportunities that passed are restored in upgraded form. Acceleration carries a prophetic multiplier. What took others 10 years begins taking you one. The freeze attempted to steal time, but acceleration brings divine compensation. You begin to outrun the losses of your past, moving faster than the damage caused by the delay. God does not just give you back what was stolen. He gives you more than the enemy expected. As momentum increases, your confidence rises. Not human pride, but divine assurance, a knowing that heaven is backing your movement. You begin to walk with authority, speak with boldness, and plan with faith. You stop doubting yourself. You stop questioning your ability. You stop underestimating your calling. Acceleration produces boldness because your spirit witnesses firsthand that God is moving you. Fear melts under momentum. Doubt dissolves under speed. Anxiety breaks under divine push. You begin to believe again deeply, fearlessly, unshakably. Momentum also comes with supernatural strength. The exhaustion that once overwhelmed you is replaced with energy. Weariness turns into resilience. Fatigue turns into fire. Tasks that once drained you now excite you. Projects that once felt heavy now feel possible. Strength returns not from rest alone, but from the divine empowerment that accompanies acceleration. God fuels your rise. Heaven becomes your supply. You do not move by your power. You move by his momentum. Acceleration shifts your timelines. Things that were scheduled for later begin to happen now. Blessings that were expected next year begin showing up this month. Doors that were supposed to open gradually swing wide instantly. Acceleration collapses waiting periods. The divine timing that once felt delayed becomes accelerated timing that surprises everyone around you. God redeems the time by multiplying the results. You enter a season where progress becomes rapid, visible, undeniable. And finally, momentum becomes your new atmosphere. You are no longer living at the pace of your past. You are living at the pace of your destiny. The freeze is permanently broken. The slowness is permanently removed. The paralysis is permanently defeated. You become a carrier of divine movement, a person who advances with power, speed, clarity, and fire. Your steps will no longer be delayed. Your progress will no longer be frozen. Your future will no longer be paused. You are stepping into a life of continuous motion, divine acceleration, and unstoppable momentum. The God who melts the freeze is also the God who propels you forward, and your destiny is now in motion. There comes a moment in every spiritual battle where the freeze breaks permanently, not gradually, not partially, but completely. This is the moment when heaven's fire meets the enemy's cold and overpowers it beyond recovery. In this moment, something shifts in the foundation of your destiny. You feel an internal release, a deep exhale in your spirit, a loosening of invisible chains. The paralysis that held you for years begins to crumble. The numbness that muted your fire begins to lift. The stillness that defined your seasons begins to break. This is the moment of irreversible thawing, the final turning point. As the breakthrough unfolds, the atmosphere around you changes. You begin to feel warmth where you once felt cold. You sense movement where you once felt stillness. You experience clarity where fog once lived. This breakthrough is not emotional, it is spiritual. It is heaven advancing into every space where darkness held ground. It is the fire of God rewriting the climate around your life. Even the air feels lighter. Even your thoughts feel freer. This is the evidence that the freeze has lost its authority and that your destiny has entered a new temperature under divine command. In this final breakthrough, God begins to restore the years that were lost to stagnation. He redeems the seasons frozen by delay. He recalculates your timeline and aligns your steps with accelerated fulfillment. What you thought was wasted was never wasted. It was preserved for a moment like this. God is not only releasing you from paralysis, he is pushing you into a season where results come quickly, doors open effortlessly, and breakthroughs manifest without resistance. The time the freeze stole is being returned with interest. As the final thawing continues, God restores your voice. Every freeze tries to silence a person, to shut down confidence, to mute authority, to weaken declarations. But in this moment, your voice regains strength. You speak differently, you pray differently, you declare differently. The fire in your words returns. Your tongue becomes an instrument of breakthrough. Your declarations become weapons, and your prayers become firestorms. Your voice is no longer a whisper in a cold room. Your voice becomes a furnace that shakes the atmosphere. This breakthrough also restores your vision. Frozen seasons blur your sight, making the future feel distant and unclear. But as the fire melts the ice, your eyes sharpen again. You begin to see what God has been preparing for you. You begin to discern the paths that were hidden. You begin to recognize opportunities you previously overlooked. Vision returns with force, depth, and clarity. You no longer stumble through spiritual darkness. You walk with revelation, guiding every step. In this moment, God begins to open doors that were never supposed to remain closed. He melts the locks that cold hands placed on your destiny. He ignites divine connections, resurrects forgotten opportunities, and reactivates assignments that were placed on pause. Doors begin to open, not by your strength, but by divine intervention. And once God opens a door, the cold winds that tried to freeze it shut lose their power forever. Breakthrough becomes your new normal. This breakthrough also exposes every hidden enemy. The same fire that melts the freeze also reveals what was lurking behind it. Every secret opposition, every silent hater, every hidden manipulator, every spiritual agent working in darkness is exposed by fire. You will no longer walk blind to the forces around you. God is illuminating the unseen so you can walk in wisdom, authority, and supernatural discernment. The freeze hid your enemies, but the fire reveals them, disarms them, and destroys their influence. As the final stage of breakthrough unfolds, God releases a fresh anointing for movement. This anointing empowers you to run where you once walked, to accelerate where you once hesitated, to rise where you once struggled. This anointing breaks the memory of paralysis, removes the residue of delay, and destroys the identity of stagnation. You will not only move, you will move with divine purpose, divine strength, and divine accuracy. This breakthrough marks the beginning of a lifetime of motion fueled by heaven. And now God seals your destiny with fire. The same fire that melted the freeze becomes the fire that surrounds you. You are stepping into a season where cold winds cannot touch you, where delays cannot freeze you, where spiritual paralysis cannot return. Your destiny is protected by heat. Your purpose is covered in flame. Your future is wrapped in divine fire. You become too hot to handle, too fiery to stop, too heated for the enemy to restrain. God has established a divine temperature around your life that no darkness can lower. Finally, this breakthrough becomes your everlasting solution, a permanent shift in your spiritual climate, and a final judgment against the freezing attacks that once defined your seasons. You are stepping into a realm where movement is constant, where progress is unbroken, where acceleration is normal. Your destiny has been unlocked. Your pathway has been cleared. Your future has been heated. You will not freeze again. You will not pause again. You will not stagnate again. This breakthrough marks the end of paralysis and the beginning of unstoppable motion. The fire of God has melted every freeze, and your life shall burn with divine momentum from this moment forward. As this prayer settles into your spirit, know that nothing about your life is returning to the atmosphere you came from. You are stepping out of this moment with a destiny that has been reheated by the fire of God, a path that has been reopened by divine intervention, and a future that has been unlocked by heavenly force. Every freeze that once defined your seasons has melted. Every paralysis that weakened your momentum has broken. The Spirit of God has ignited a warmth within you that cannot be extinguished by darkness, delay, or demonic resistance. You are not leaving this place the way you entered. You are rising with a temperature higher than anything the enemy can withstand. Tonight marks the beginning of a new spiritual climate over your life. The cold rooms where your dreams were stored have been opened. The frozen chambers where your opportunities were kept have been broken. The numbness that sat on your prayers has lifted. What once felt distant feels near. What once felt impossible feels reachable. The fire of God has gone before you, around you, and within you. Your destiny is no longer surrounded by frost. It is surrounded by flame. Your future is not held by delays. It is carried by divine acceleration. Every area that grew quiet is awakening again. Every purpose that felt buried is rising again. Every aspiration that lost its heat is burning again. You are entering a season where your spirit moves freely. Your mind thinks clearly. Your heart loves boldly. And your feet walk steadily into the places God ordained. The heaviness has lifted. The slowness has broken. The stillness has ended. Destiny is calling you forward with a voice louder than fear, louder than delay, louder than the enemy's cold whispers. You are stepping into movement, that cannot be interrupted. As you go forward from here, walk with the confidence of someone who carries divine fire. You are not fragile. You are not vulnerable. You are not susceptible to the atmosphere you once battled. You have become the atmosphere. The same fire that melted your paralysis now burns as a shield around you. Where you go, heat goes. When you speak, fire speaks. When you pray, fire responds. When you move, fire leads. Nothing assigned to slow you will succeed. Nothing sent to freeze you will stand. Nothing designed to paralyze you will remain. Tonight, the heavens have rewritten your narrative, and the earth will respond to the change. You will see unusual speed. You will experience sudden openings. You will walk through doors that had been locked for years. You will rise with momentum that surprises those who watched you struggle. You will testify of breakthroughs that happened faster than expected. The fire that touched your life was not temporary. It was foundational. It has changed the weather of your destiny, and no cold wind will ever dominate you again. As you leave this moment, remember this. Movement is now your portion. Acceleration is now your inheritance. Breakthrough is now your rhythm. Favor is now your atmosphere. You have been released from the chambers of stagnation and established in the realm of unbroken progress. Heaven has melted what held you, and no force from hell can refreeze what God has liberated. You are stepping into a journey where every step fulfills prophecy, every decision carries grace, and every season reveals increase. Walk in faith, walk in strength, walk in fire. Let your spirit remain sensitive to the God who has just shifted your temperature. Let your voice remain bold against the forces that once silenced you. Let your steps remain steady toward the future that God has reignited. And let the warmth of this deliverance follow you into every room, every challenge, every opportunity, and every season ahead. What God has heated, no enemy can cool. What God has awakened, no force can put back to sleep. What God has moved, no freeze can halt again. You are rising in unstoppable motion. You are walking in irreversible breakthrough. You are living in divine temperature. The freeze has ended. The paralysis has broken. The delay has melted. The fire of God rests upon you, surrounds you, moves with you, and speaks for you. Your destiny is warmed. Your path is clear. Your future is alive. This is your moment of movement. This is your hour of acceleration. This is your season of heat. And from this day forward, you will never freeze again. Stay protected. Stay advancing. Stay burning. This is your everlasting solution.